But I also think no one in our generation since Obama has been able to get that out of our generation.
Yeah.
And I think they should, the parties should take a look at that and try to create that again, rather than just bringing in these dinosaurs that none of us really care for.
Well, it's funny. He was the youngest. I mean, out of all of the candidates that we're talking about that have been president recently, right, or have run for president, Obama was the youngest.
Because I think JFK was the youngest to date.
Politicians are politicians. I didn't know J.D. Vance was a cross-dresser.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Only Lawsuits podcast. We are 20-something episodes in. This is the second episode of the new year. And our boy, Donald Trump, has just gotten inaugurated. So this entire episode is basically going to be about his inauguration and the current administration.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, I think based off of everything we have seen, let's just talk about it openly, right? What have you seen since he's gotten, inaugurated? Me and Farr were in the office. We watched, the inauguration with one of our interns and one of the other staff members here, our receptionist Gigi, and dude, it was interesting because, Farah tends to be a little bit more liberal. I don't genuinely give a fuck. Like, I just want to see everyone crash and burn. I'm a libertarian. And then we had our intern that was super conservative and he was very like Trump. And then Gigi, Gigi was kind of like, yeah, Trump, no Trump. Like so it was kind of one of those things where it was a real spectrum of emotion, right? So that's what we saw the day of the inauguration. What in your social circles? What's the feeling? Tell me how people are talking. What are people saying?
I just feel like, well, first of all, everyone was judging all of the speeches, and it's entertaining, but I also hate that American politics have just become such a spectacle because of his presidency, more so than other people. And it's almost just like a form of entertainment at this point. Like, it's almost like not real. And I just started dissociating. You were like, what do you feel about it? And I'm like, I'm answering clients.
That's a great question. When I was watching the inauguration, there were a lot of thoughts that were going through my mind. I think back to when he was being inaugurated in 2016 and how divisive that time in the country was. The protests going on around Washington, D.C., and how basically no one showed up to that inauguration. Yeah. Right? Now you fast forward 8 years later, it's filled with celebrities, maybe some more so leaning on the right wing. It's filled with a lot more of like a positive vibe, right? Because when he was inaugurated in 2016, it was very divisive, but leaning way more toward the negativity. Whereas this time around, any negativity was a little bit more subdued. I think the most eye-opening thing, and I've mentioned it prior, is all of the billionaires there. And I think that's the only thing that rubbed me the wrong way. Because as someone that ran on the platform of making sure that you're going to bring jobs back to America and you're fighting for the people, that's not the greatest look, having the wealthiest people there right behind you, actually. So,
well, to play devil's advocate a little bit, look, I personally think being associated with the billionaires, yes, it is seemingly a bad look. And I mentioned this before. Do I 100% expect, some of his associates and his acquaintances to be getting government contracts? They're going to make a shit ton of money. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But at least I know. You know what I'm saying? At least I know Elon Musk is going to be getting these contracts because I'm going to know who to scrutinize, right? I'm going to watch the actions of Elon Musk. I'm going to watch the actions of the billionaires and trillionaires that he's associating with. And, there's something that while I don't like it, at least I know the problem that I always had with some of the other political candidates is we just don't know who they're interacting with. There was a lot of ghost movement. There was a lot of backroom deals. Look, this shit's being put out in the open. The CEO of OpenAI he did a briefing with them yesterday. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's kind of like, look, at least we're given the opportunity to see who's going to try to fuck us. But here's what kind of scary, right? To follow up a little bit on your concern, what the outgoing president did minutes before while Trump was being inaugurated, basically, he pardoned preemptively his entire family and a shit ton of other people that we have no idea what they were pardoned for. It was just a blanket boilerplate pardon that basically says, because they're potentially going to be targeted politically. Now, here's the scary thing. That's a precedent that now, prior to, I wasn't so worried about these billionaires doing a bunch of shady shit. But guess what Biden just did? He just openly allowed, if they don't fix this issue with the presidential pardoning system, we're going to get so royally as citizens, because all Trump's going to do is say, I'm going to pardon every single person I've had a business dealing with since January of 2025.
And he is going to do that. And
do you think he should have the power to do that?
Well, he already did.
President should have the power.
Well, when he left office, that's what I'm saying. Like with history, people have a very short-term memory, and I'm not saying
I know he pardoned people.
Yeah, because so I'm not saying what Biden did was right. To give context to what you're saying, Biden pardoned a lot of his family members, and he pardoned.
He preliminary pardoned.
So he gave them preliminary pardons, and then he gave pardons to
cabinet members, January 6th.
A few cabinet members, a few people dealing with the January 6th riots, and then the legal team that was going after Trump over the last few years with a variety of the offenses that Trump was being accused for. So that was a majority of the pardons.
And I think some of those are really important, because if you have someone coming in who was threatening all of that, especially with his platform, like, I can understand why Biden did that. I'm sure there were some indiscretions where he did some things that, like his own family.
Yeah.
But my bigger issue is that the presidency has turned into a joke. And I'm more afraid that the billionaires now know that the presidency can be bought.
Yes.
Well, here's my thing. Whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden, I don't give a who the president is. I don't think there should be a thing such as a preliminary pardon. As an American citizen, I want to know what the my president is pardoning them for, because I say that it's real simple. One of the biggest things the federal government will do when it comes to trying to nail you for anything criminally is the concept of conspiracy. Conspiracy is one of the simplest forms of crimes that you can get convicted of, right? Literally, you can go and like send a text message to someone that committed a crime potentially, and I'm making this up kind of, but theoretically they will use that text message because you sent a text message to someone committing a crime. You're part of a criminal conspiracy. And then all of a sudden the train of justice, the American judicial system, comes streaming down your back, right? And that's what really pisses me off with the preemptive pardon. I don't give a allow the president to pardon whoever they want, but I want to know what the pardon's for. I want to know with specificity exactly what the president is giving up, because if that's the case, I want to pardon. He's handing out preemptive pardons. There's no reason he shouldn't preemptively pardon the entire American populace.
No, I agree with that. I think that's well said. I think if you're going to give these pardons out, there should be a guideline or some context behind what this person is being pardoned for, instead of it being like a blanket pardon.
I don't think
for anything that has happened before and might potentially happen like right afterwards. But it's a very, very slippery slope. Just in my eyes, I think when I look at it from just a very, very pragmatic standpoint, all it looked like with having all of those billionaires behind him was an oligarchy. Yeah. And them being there to essentially kiss the ring.
Listen,
right. So,
and that's what it is. I mean, I do have a lot of concerns about, the problem is there's no transparency. We as citizens can't go and see the internal workings of these companies and how they're making the decisions that they're making in relation to, working with the U.S. government. And I think it's even crazier is like, look, one of the biggest things that I hated was that was involving the social media platforms like Meta, right? When Mark Zuckerberg sat 4 or 5 years ago and said, "Oh, we're not censoring people, we're not doing this, we're not doing that," and all of a sudden hops on Joe Rogan after Trump wins the election, it's like, yeah, we were censoring, yeah, we were doing all that. It's number one. It shows that these companies they don't give a fuck,
man. Yeah,
they're gonna lie to us, and they're gonna do whatever they want that benefits them. I'm glad there's a little bit. I feel like at the end of the day, some of these companies are being a little bit more transparent with their consumers because it's up. Like we know now, and they've created a tool that's kind of brought their own demise where social media allows us to throw these crazy conspiracy theories out there, and then the fishing expedition starts, so people are poking, people are prying, and I'm glad we have social media. I'm glad we have these tools to like investigate it, but I'm worried just as much as anyone is like, now you have these people working together, whereas we had kind of a government and there was so much like people battling one another about rights. Now, who knows what's going to happen. So,
and one of the things that you really liked about Trump was how transparent he was being, or he was trying to like implode things so that everyone kind of knew what's going on. But does it not bother you that now he has these associations with these billionaires and he's putting them in positions and they're secretive AF?
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. And that's the problem is, there's a lot of stuff we just don't know, and we're not going to know. There's a lot of private jet meetings that are going to be happening. There's a lot of the fact that Elon Musk can just call up the president and, get stuff done is crazy. Because you know why that makes me fearful? It's because it's only a hop skip away before, Musk calls up, or Trump calls up Musk possibly and says, hey, I want to go and, find the IP, the internet stuff for this IP address, which is all tied to a government thing. And so it gets crazy, right? It starts a whole concept of conspiracy. And then look, they're going to start integrating AI into the American political system.
Well, look, we live in the greatest country in the world. And we live in the greatest country of the world because you can say what you want and generally not have to worry about any government repercussions and only have to worry about what the public perception is.
Yeah.
Regardless of what your comments are, if they're left-leaning or right-leaning. My biggest fear is that when you have all of these billionaires who are basically trying to kiss the ring and get as close as they can to the presidency, it really makes you think about the advent of free speech and how that's going to be affected when they do essentially, like you said, want to go after certain critics, right? We've had many situations over like the last few years, and there's a lot of conspiracies behind it, where somebody is a whistleblower, and all of a sudden, a few months later, they end up dying. Or or something happens behind the scenes, right? So, and I'm not trying to open up like Pandora's box here, but ultimately at the end of the day, just like Eventually, the cards around Jeffrey Epstein fell down. The cards around Diddy fell down. All of like the super wealthy. Eventually, the truth does come out.
Yeah.
The danger is like, how much are they now going to be able to keep under wraps, being as close to the White House as they are?
Listen, buddy, that's the beauty of it. I think. I mean, I think the fact of the matter is, yes, you're 100% correct. There's a lot of crazy shit that can go on. But who's to say this shit wasn't going on already? We all have our suspicions about the Clintons. You know what I'm saying? We all have our suspicions about certain political families, right? In certain people. Now, I think if anything, it's going to be easier to prove, because whereas we used to live in a time where you could coincidentally delete your server, and now all that is going to be way more trackable. All the communications, all the stuff is going to be subject to subpoenas. It's going to be subject to stuff. But then it comes into question on whether or not they can be criminally persecuted with that whole concept of the presidential pardon.
But I also think they found a loophole, because a lot of them probably wouldn't have ever been able to run for office because of things possibly in their past, or, you know, their nationality and whatever, such as like Elon. But now they found the loophole where they're not going to be discriminated, or they're not going to be like looked at under a microscope before being elected. They've just been selected. And I think also, like, with all of these people, like, you have to think, I think also kissing the ring is an apt term, but it's also giving too much credit to Donald Trump. I don't think, you know, all of these like rich billionaires, Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg, Elon, they got there because, you know, they're smart. They knew what they were doing. They are doing what they can to manipulate Trump. I don't think he is not anywhere near smart enough to use them for his purpose, other than the fact that it helped him win the presidency.
But that's one of the reasons why I'll say, look, he's a genius.
He is a genius, man.
Because at the end of the day, look, he isn't the smartest. He clearly isn't, but I will say, I give him credit where credit's due. When I first saw him run in 2016, I said, no way in a million years will this guy ever win the presidency. He shut me up in 2016, and he shut me up. Well, you know, I voted for him this time around because of the current state of the politics. But, you know, he impressed me with his run, right? And I will say, I think he has genuinely, where he was not experienced in the past, he's experienced now. And I think he's definitely shown, you know, a different style. He's he is smart.
Look, and as
stupid as he is, he's smart.
Yeah. No, I agree that he has more experience, and he's like, you know, he's already been implementing that, and I can see it. But how is it not problematic that, you know, that these millionaires are like basically shamelessly have their own agendas, and like, you know, he's allowing them to do that essentially.
But
he's a businessman, so I agree. So before Mike interjects, like, I agree with what he said completely. Like, in 2016, all I could think about was, man, Donald Trump is a imbecile, right? He's stupid. I don't know like how people are gravitating toward this guy, but every subsequent public appearance, every year that's passed by, I've respected his master manipulation of the media and knowing what to say to people to keep them engaged and to basically get him into office. So when I look at these billionaires, he knows exactly what he wants from them, right? He wants undying fealty to him to make sure that he can push his agenda this time around to get what he needs to get done. Because I think that was one of the negatives of 2016 was that he was coming into office not being experienced of how stuff works in Washington, and he had a lot of struggles going through a ton of different people. Like, I mean, that was that administration was rife with turnovers, and this time around, he's making sure, like, listen, if I'm putting you into place, you're going to get this done, or I'm kicking your ass to the curb.
Yeah, and well, to go to your point, right? Like, look, I think your concern is 100% valid. But all I'm trying to say is, look, now we know. Like, we know who the players are that he's interacting with, right? Before, we didn't know, and it was denied, that the Biden campaign was reaching out to Facebook and trying to censor speech. We didn't know that until the Twitter files came out, right? So now we know. And we don't know with certainty that the Democrats and some of the more liberal leaning billionaires and entrepreneurs aren't conspiring to, restrict certain freedoms that Americans have. We didn't know. At least now, the only thing that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable now is I know who we're dealing with more than we did before. And to a certain regard, like, we're getting one way or the other, in my opinion. I like to see that the way I've been thinking about it over the past 10 to 15 years, when it comes to the way I look at politics, it's a pendulum, right? And we're swinging. We went from super left to right to left, and now we're going back to more of a, I think, not as far right, but a little bit more, right leaning. Hopefully, God willing, the Democrats or hopefully a third party comes along that garners the ability to attract people, to bring people to the middle, because that's where we need to be, right? We need to stop the pendulum from swinging. We need to be in the middle, and we need these extremes, because we needed to see, as controversial as this is, we needed to see a biological male beat the shit out of a female in a sport to see why maybe we need to consider not allowing that to be, a situation that happens. We needed to see the ramifications of hiring people based off of, woke agendas. We needed to see how that plays out. And we need to go back to the concept of, let's get people that are actually like meant for jobs, right? We should, if you're going to go, case in point, if you're going to be a judge, you should have experience in the law, right? Same concept with people running our political office. I don't want someone, and this is what there was a guy that like got convicted of like shoplifting that was part of the Biden administration. He was like I don't know if he was transgender.
He was transgender. He was part of like the energy department or something.
But was
like
was he transgender, or was he just like,
I'll put that information up on screen.
I don't know if he was transgender, because he looked like, I don't know if he identified as a female or not, but that's what I'm saying. He was part of the energy department.
He cross-dressed. Yeah, he cross-dressed,
and I'm being sincere.
What is the relevance of that?
Well, what I'm saying is he was like part of a political, like he was running the energy department or something.
Yeah, he was part of like the energy department.
He was one of the departments, and he had no idea what he was doing. And then he was like stealing people's luggage and shoplifting, and like I don't want that shit running the energy department. I want
Donald Trump is a convicted felon.
That's political, and I'll take that. Listen, I voted for that man.
No, but I'm just saying we can't like look at people for that reason. If we want, if we want to give everyone a chance. He shoplifted once doesn't mean he can't run the energy.
And I do agree with that. I do agree with that, because I can't call somebody out for that when someone else is getting called out for more extreme crimes. And look, two wrongs don't make a right, but we need to be very, very level-headed in looking at what it is. So
no, I agree. Look, do I think Trump is the most qualified person to be president? No, but out of the two of them, yes.
I mean, let's see. Like, he's the president now. He was sworn in. Like, I'm willing to give him the opportunity to see if he can follow through on his promises to actually make the country better. Yeah. I appreciate everyone, that showed up to the inauguration with, a sense of union, and people were commenting on Barack Obama and him were like joking at at Jimmy Carter's funeral and things like that. It's like, you have to realize, just because these people are on two opposite sides of the political spectrum doesn't mean that they can't joke around. Yeah. We're all human beings, we're all Americans. And that just shows that they want what's best for this country.
Yeah, and case in point, that's how you got to be, because look, all of us have very different political and personal ideologies about how things run, but we get along perfectly fine no matter what what our beliefs are. And I think it's a healthy discourse to have. You know what I'm saying? Because look, just like you can say, oh, Donald Trump's a felon, like I'll take it. And, you know, we keep it moving. And because that's like part of the basics of like civilization, man. Engage, interact.
And it's also not personal.
Yeah. Like
It's
we're
not.
just having fun, you know, and that's part of life, man. You got to have different perspectives.
Unless you're Kamala Harris. In that case, you're going to sit there with a sour face.
No, and I love the fact that you said that, you know, civil discourse, because I've seen so many families be torn apart, so many friendships have like these large rifts created just based off of like who you're voting for.
Yeah.
And I'll use my father as an example. You know, my father is a huge inspiration to me. And you know, this is a guy who, you know, marched with Martin Luther King, you know, was very into civil rights when, you know, I was growing up, and, very, very into civil rights, you know, at a certain point in time. He grew up in the age of, you know, being ethnic, and there still being like colored restrooms, you know, in the South. So, you know, for someone who, you know, coming from like his side of the family, like I have a lot of very liberal family members who are very civil rights oriented, very, you know, liberal and left leaning. He is someone that in 2016, you know, 2020 and 2024, he decided to vote for Donald Trump. And I think like the first time around when he voted for him, I was so mad, right? Like for bullshit reasons, like, oh, how could you vote for somebody like this? But then, you know, you really look through all of the bullshit that politics does to divide us all. And it's really just like a difference of opinion, right? I'm kind of disappointed in myself, even like looking at how I viewed politics back then versus how I view it now, being, you know, somebody that has always like had like a little conservative in them. And like, look, you're going to vote for the person that you think is going to do the best job for the country. And that's it. That doesn't change who you are on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't change like your daily interactions with people. That is just your opinion. And that's what we fought for, our you know, freedom of speech and being able to vote for who you want.
And politicians are all the same. They'll lie, cheat, and steal to get your vote, to get you to believe whatever they want to. But I think there is something to be said about like difference of opinion, like actually when it comes to like people's rights or like things like that I understand. But otherwise, for the most part, like just like in this last election, both of them were like, you know, both of the parties were pro-Israel. I wasn't happy about that on either side. But now look, Donald Trump basically already like started working towards getting a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it's crazy. You know, funny story about the, you know, how we used to be when I went to UCF, and I was like, I was with one of my buddies that I went to school with there, and we ended up somehow like going to one of those like college Democrat meetings, and we had a trip going to like to Tallahassee. So on the bus ride up there, right, like, you know, I don't want to say I was a Democrat. I've always been more of like a liberal leaning person, but I've always been more like fiscally conservative, right? So it's the Indian in me, by the way. But,
Valencia Students for Change, baby.
So dude, I'll never forget this. My entire perspective changed because there was some girls that went to school with us, and one of them is in politics now. I'm not even going to say her name. She's here in Central Florida, but her and her sister were the heads of this college Democrats thing. And they were like, you know, we were on the bus and they were like, they're doing their typical like rants and raves. Like, we want to do this. We want to get, you know, people equal votes and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, all right, I can support that. And then they were like, tax the rich. I was like, what? You know, and I'm like, no unfair taxes, bitch. I want a flat tax, you know? Like, so like at that point when we got there, we were supposed to go like lobby for like certain shit. And I was like, this, I'm going and hang out. So I just took the bus ride up, and me and my buddy, we just went and hung out in Tallahassee. We didn't lobby for shit. And after that, we never talked to any of those people ever again.
We've come a long way, man. You know, Valencia Students for Change being
that too. Don't even talk about.
We were. I remember we were driving people to the voter booths
really
to vote because we Valencia Students for Change was like it's a very it was a very liberal leaning organization and
Obama was a G.
And we were hard Obama heads, man. Like we loved Obama. Obama was like this.
First term, he was Obama.
He was such
Obama
a G,
had
man.
that vibe, dude.
He did. He
from the oration skills. Like we went to did you go to one of the speeches with me?
No, that day I remember we were supposed to because I was canvassing that day,
dude.
Yeah, Mike called me afterwards. He's like, "Yo, man,
it was sick." But dude, Obama was. I'll tell you, the first time Obama ran, it was kind of like the equivalent of Trump. He was something different, something that we've never seen before. And it really kind of drawed me to the political spectrum even more.
He got us really excited to work hard for his campaign.
Yeah.
To go out, be passionate about politics and, talk to other people, have civilized discussions with them about like why he was the better candidate. So that was a fun time.
Yeah.
That was a very, very fun time.
And at the end of the day, look where I am now. I sit here, way more conservative than I've ever been in my life. And I think it was just as you get older, you should, it's kind of like weird. Like a lot of comedians joke about it. Shane Gillis did a joke about like, how his dad's like a conservative and like, but it's kind of like you at some point transition into a full conservative dad wearing like, jorts and New Balances. And that's kind of like where I'm at in my life.
But, I also think no one in our generation since Obama has been able to get that out of our generation.
Yeah.
And I think they should, like the parties should take a look at that and try to create that again rather than just bringing in these dinosaurs that none of us really care for.
Well, it's funny. He was the youngest. I mean, out of all of the candidates that we're talking about that have been president recently, right, or have run for president, Obama was the youngest.
Because I think JFK was the youngest to date.
Yeah, and I think, I think the Republicans are trying that with JD Vance.
Oh, I was going to ask you, what do you think about JD Vance?
I mean, I haven't really paid attention to him other than the Rogan interview, and I really liked him during the Rogan interview.
He was also a cross-dresser, and he was very, very vocally anti-Trump and even wrote a book about it.
I mean, I liked him in the Joe Rogan interview. Realistically, he's a textbook politician, right? They're all a few years ago, literally like earlier last year, DeSantis was like, he can't run, he was fucking attacking Trump. But then when he realized, I'll never forget it. When I saw DeSantis like at the political, I think it was one of the debates, and he was not comfortable on stage and he just like bombed. I knew at that point, I was like, he's going to go full support to Trump because Trump's that showman, right? He's like the greatest showman, man. Puts on his hat and he just runs the show. So, it's one of those things where like politicians are politicians. I didn't know JD Vance was a cross-dresser.
There were pictures that came out of him like in drag.
I mean, listen, I'll be honest with you.
You have those photos?
Every single guy.
You did drag in college?
Every single guy.
Can we find those photos and release them?
Probably. Dude, I guarantee you there's a Halloween photo floating around somewhere of me wearing like balloons in my shirt or some shit.
Oh my God.
There's something out there. God knows what listen, I used to manage a strip club. You know how much probably out there?
Yeah.
But
look,
you're not the vice president of the United States.
I don't care if he cross-dressed in the past. All I care about is him doing a good job for the country, and that's it. Like, to me, the main thing is be consistent, try to be as honest as possible.
Well, that's why I brought that up. It's not because I actually cared that he did those things. It's just that like he flip-flopped so hard that it's just like, how do you trust that? I
mean, that's for him to figure out, and he's going to get fired by Donald Trump. Whatever. So let's talk about something a little, now that we've kind of cleared the air, I feel like. let's talk about some of the executive orders. So are there any, I'm going to tell you about an executive order that really kind of got my mind going. And it's kind of, there's two things. There's obviously some of locking down the border, right? That was a really big one for me. But was
that the stay in Mexico?
Yeah, like him rescinding all the stuff and making the national emergency, all that, right? But what was even more interesting for me was the executive order that he signed where he literally like made it to where gangs and like cartels are kind of like terrorist organizations. Dude, so that kind of got my head going, right? Think about this. Right. I watch Narcos, right? I love the Netflix series Narcos. I love like the history behind drug cartels and stuff like that. I think it's super interesting because you really get to see like the corruption in government. You see all the juicy stuff that we kind of joke about, here collectively, right? But one of the craziest shit is we all know with the El Chapo drug cartels, like, because in extradition and all this stuff, that these things are common knowledge now. Dude, how do you think that made me start thinking about what if the U.S. government were to, now that they're saying that cartels are terrorist organizations, invade Mexico, dude?
I mean, that
crazy, right?
That would be an outlier situation. I know it is something that, if you're gauging it on like, I guess,
think about it with the Taliban,
a percentage scale. Yeah.
The U.S. invented the Taliban.
Yeah. The U.S. did
think about it, but that's what, the U.S. invented the drug cartels too. The CIA,
so how is this actually helping?
Because what if now we go and invade Mexico?
We are always creating our own enemies.
But before
and arming them.
So I know, like we're idiots, but
for real.
But here's my thing. So what if like that I think that on a political stage, that's like a bargaining chip for them, because now, right, since the US government has said your cartels are terrorist organizations, I think that gives more leverage over foreign policy with the Mexican government, because there is blatant corruption from in the past. Mexico has a history of corruption when it comes to drug cartels. So now, dude, I think it's America's way of kind of like, really like stepping it up when it comes to that. Because I've always been one to say, listen, I don't understand how drug cartels, and I guess I do kind of, with guerrilla warfare tactics and stuff like that, but I don't understand how drug cartels that they just sell drugs have the ability to withstand an army, a military. And the only thing that comes to mind is, look, the Mexican military must still have issues of corruption, right? But now the American military, Lord knows, the only thing that can corrupt the American military is the contractors that benefit from it. And you got me if you don't think contractors like Lockheed Martin don't want to use Tomahawk missiles in Sinaloa. That's some crazy.
Well, I do agree with the executive order in the sense that you're putting the responsibility more on Mexico now.
Yeah. Because
you hit the nail on the head. For many decades, these drug cartels have been able to get away with murder, with the smuggling, and essentially feel like they're always getting away with the slap on the wrist, because when you lock up some of these people like El Chapo, or some of like El Chapo's like family members, whether it be his sons or people from competing gangs, for one reason or another, they're always able to escape the prison. And when they are maybe in a specific town and about to be caught, all of like these gang members come in and they start saying like, hey, we're going to start killing civilians if you don't allow him to have or this person to have free passage. There is like an industrial complex, because I don't know why Mexico has never been able to get like a good grasp on it. but they are terrorist organizations. I mean, like, dude, they kill mayors, they kill political officials. They're able to basically cross the border. We talked about that situation on another podcast where they were essentially able to cross the border and take someone that was basically bragging about, like, getting away from them and bringing them back across and just murdering them.
But that's what I'm saying. I think it's crazy that now this is the first time. This seems like such a common sense issue that they probably should have done, years ago, back in the 80s.
But
possibly.
also, is it putting the responsibility on the governments of those countries with the cartels, or is it like we are recognizing them as terrorist organizations?
So from my understanding, and I haven't really reviewed it thoroughly, but from the way the media is pitching it, it seems like it's like we're recognizing them as terrorist organizations.
So if anything, I could also see a loophole in which that's also inviting more organized crime, possibly if the cartel is willing to work with the U.S. government and the government of that country isn't, then because the U.S. is one of the powers that has the ability to recognize countries and recognize governments.
That's an interesting perspective.
So what if there's more corruption and the cartel is able to pay off? And let's not say there's no corruption to be able to pay off someone.
Create like a civil war situation within countries?
Yeah.
That'd be fucking crazy.
I mean, that's what we did in Cuba. It's what we did in Panama. It's what
what I was going to say.
It's what we did in
Cuba.
Afghanistan to create the Taliban, create civil wars.
It's what we did in Iraq when they killed Saddam Hussein. So they killed the leader. They got rid of the democracy. It's in shambles now, and it's guerrilla warfare.
But here's the thing: we don't own any of those countries. That's the dumbest. That's the biggest shit pisses me off. Like I know this sounds, but listen. If we're going to invest millions and billions and trillions of dollars in helping people fight whatever the fuck they're fighting, I'm sorry. I want the country, I'm buy that shit cash. You know what I'm saying? That's how I feel. I'll make all them people American, like all y'all are now American.
No, they just make those countries dependent on America and then leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't benefit us. I'd rather just have the country. It's kind of like I think about it like America should approach foreign policy like we're going to collect, we're like the collector, the Marvel, the collector.
Yeah.
We just put it there and we say,
if you want us to bail you out, you have to become one of us.
Yeah, sign the ring, you sign the line, baby.
Well, ironically, it's proven that we only get involved into political conflicts globally when it serves our purpose economically. So with Iraq, Afghanistan, a lot of these countries in the Middle East.
With Israel, it doesn't even serve us economically.
Well, it serves us from a wartime perspective because strategically Israel is right in the middle
of the, it kind of balances.
It balances everything out. Yeah.
Yeah. I did politics and fucking undergrad, and they were saying that's one of the reasons why Israel's so important is because it helps keep us balanced there somewhat.
Yeah.
So then why did we have to send troops instead of Israeli soldiers to invade other Middle Eastern countries?
You know what would have been even better if we just had the state of Iraq. I'd much rather just have Iraq be the 51st state.
Mike is a lot more Mike would be a bit more knowledgeable about that, having taken the course on that. But I think I think it basically comes down to we can't involve ourselves directly, but we can train their troops, right? So for example, Israel. We provide them all of the military resources in order to build up their own military. We train their military. We do everything we can to finance their military. But if we got directly involved,
we need to
with
be
our
like
soldiers.
Britain,
yeah,
history needs to repeat itself, and they need to just be colonies. I want Ukraine to be a colony
of the United States.
Yeah, they want our money. They want our money. Yeah. Think about it. Think about that.
But I feel like with Israel, it's the other way around. I feel like our country basically works for them. Look, they sent $700 to Gavin Newsom, and like in California, they sent $700 each to the people who lost their homes in the fire. I don't necessarily feel that bad for all those people because most of them are millionaires and they can get their homes back.
Yeah.
Whereas, how much money have we still been sending?
Well,
overseas?
that's my point. Like I'm an isolationist, right? I don't believe we should give any money to any country that we're not directly benefiting from. And when I say benefit, like I want ownership interest, because you know what the Chinese government does is they do it the smart way. The Chinese are the smartest business people in the world. They would go around. They went in, I believe, the South Pacific, and I believe in the African countries too. And don't quote me on this, but I believe what a lot of them did is in certain countries, they would like go and build up the infrastructure off of loans. And then these countries, like they would go build these multi-billion-dollar projects, infrastructure projects in these countries that had like no money. So obviously,
now that country is indebted to them.
They couldn't pay the loan. They foreclose on the loan and take the property.
That's what
they
should do.
Yeah, that's what we should do too. We should look, that's how you control shit, right? Control the ports, control the thing. It's the same thing, but do it through finances.
Yeah.
You want money from us? All right, you got to give us some. We want X amount of interest. We want this. We want that. You know what I'm saying? Like, stop giving our money away. Start preserving our interest. It's simple.
Well, speaking of money, right? It's not an executive order, or I don't know if it was, but we had talked about it just briefly prior, where Trump hosted a brief meeting with, or a brief public speaking engagement with the CEO of OpenAI, a CEO of Oracle, and the CEO of SoftBank, right? Larry Ellison of Oracle and Sam Fried of
SoftBank,
or Sam Altman of OpenAI.
Okay.
I forget what the Asian or Japanese gentleman's name was of SoftBank, but Trump is putting $500 billion into AI investment. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's smart and it's scary. I think just technology in general is scary. It's even scarier that it's going to be within our government because a lot of this stuff is still in its beta testing. You know what I mean? To have those types of AI have access to that kind of sensitive information is always going to be scary. But I think it is smart in the sense that, it's the future.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that, a lot of private data is going to be, technically in that. As long as I can sue whoever the involved, I'm going to be cool with it.
Yeah.
Because you leak my stuff and they use it, I'm going to sue the shit out of you. Hopefully you don't get a pardon and I can get paid. But what's crazy is like, I do like the concept of, AI infrastructure being integrated in the government, because I'll be honest with you, government is probably the most inefficient thing in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So honestly, I really do feel like even a beta version of ChatGPT, in the judicial or in the government is probably better than the smartest, most talented individuals that they get from the Ivy Leagues, because none of them do the work that a computer could do probably half as good. And it's screwed up, but like, I do think we live in a time where people need to adjust to using AI, and we need to stop fighting it and become way more efficient. I mean, you guys have seen it. We've been implementing it throughout our firm
and we've become very, very efficient.
Oh, dude, our efficiency is ridiculous. I can do 10 times the work with that I used to be able to do, and I can do it way more aggressively. Like, there's shit that I can do now that's I can demolish people.
Yeah, but if the internet's down, then we're useless.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's time to
happened a few times.
No, but if we get Starlink.
Yeah. I agree with you, man. I think that there, the only thing I'll say about it is I definitely think that there are a lot of inefficiencies in government, and this could be a really, really great tool to make things a lot more efficient. I do think that one thing that they haven't done with a lot of AI as of yet, and that's still to be determined in Congress and the Senate, is to put proper protections in place and proper guidelines of how you're going to protect people and their livelihoods. Because the unfortunate reality is, as AI makes something more efficient, human beings are the ones that are seen as the redundancy, and the redundancies are usually kind of kicked to the curb with no protections whatsoever. But yeah, man, I mean, a lot going on, a lot that we'll cover on future episodes. I mean, we covered quite a lot today, so
yeah.
We didn't talk about the Nazi salute that Elon Musk did twice.
So let's have that be like the final topic. What do you guys think of that, actually?
I think it was on purpose.
Yeah, I think it was on purpose too. I think he knew what he was doing.
I think he thinks he's untouchable. He
Yeah.
bought the presidency.
He did.
In the most basic form of, being an advocate for the rights of people, I believe you should be allowed to do a Nazi salute.
What the?
Freedom of expression.
Freedom of expression?
Speech, baby. Freedom of speech. Listen,
I'm not saying you shouldn't be allowed to do it.
Was it seemingly, did it look like a Nazi salute? Yes. Did he say it was a Nazi salute? No, but it's very...
I think that's the thing about the salute, is that it's unspoken.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? But it's kind of like, I think about it like, man, that's such a weird situation to be in, because it's
a
totally
scary thing.
It's like, I just don't. I don't think it's the right thing to do. Like, I think anything acknowledging, Nazis and white supremacy or any form of racial supremacy is stupid, right? I think, like, look, humans just happened so. We were born in different parts of the countries, and our bodies and our ancestors evolved to different pigments to adjust to UV exposure, right? Like, that's literally what it is. And I do, but as this is, man, like, I've always, from being very young, and one of my biggest draws to the legal profession is, and I'll never forget this, in high school, I had a teacher that really made this kind of solidified, where he was like, look, I may not agree with what someone says, but I will fight, to make sure they have the ability to say it, right? And he used the KKK as an example. Look, I'm definitely not white, right? And I definitely would be, had the KKK, been around when I was born and we didn't have rights we do now, like, definitely I would be subject to discrimination. But the whole thing that like really gives me a lot of, like, passion about the legal system is the fact that we do have, constitutional rights such as free speech. And as an officer of the court, as a lawyer, as this sounds, I would stand by and take the KKK on as a client to advocate for their right to spew their beliefs, because just as they have the right to spew their beliefs of hatred, I have the rights to spew my beliefs against something. I don't want the government to tell me what I can and cannot say or do. So it's it's like, I look at it from a very ideological perspective, being a lawyer. Do I agree with anything they say personally? No. But everything inside of me, my whole, ideology behind becoming a lawyer is based off of that concept of, like, fuck it, you should be able to do it.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't think that he shouldn't be able to do it. I'm just saying it was a choice.
It was a choice. Yeah. I look, to me, the scary thing is that, before I get into that, I think, look, you're absolutely right. You should fight just as hard for the person that you disagree with, as the person that you do agree with. But with Elon, somebody should never feel like they're untouchable. And that's my issue. It's that, like, whether whether he did it, consciously, subconsciously, you should know what the ramifications of doing something like that are. Yeah. And it's not a good look on people thinking that you can get away with something like that and there not be any repercussions.
Well,
he's from apartheid South Africa. He doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I this is the funniest part of all this, right? Who made Elon one of the wealthiest people in the world? The liberals.
That's what I'm saying. So many people worship him.
But look, will he face ramifications for it through his, businesses? Probably. Is he gonna give? No, but this is like it's karma, man. He was the Democrat golden boy for the longest time, and
this
now,
is why you don't put anyone on a pedestal.
Yeah, you always you got to scrutinize everyone equally and don't trust anyone, man.
I would like to go on record and say I never liked him.
I still to this day I
always thought he was a weirdo.
I don't like Teslas. I hate the concept of Tesla. Right? I hate the concept of autonomous vehicles. I hate that entire industry. Do I like the technology? Yes, I do. I like having driver assistance, right? Like, I'll be the first to admit, man, I sit in my truck and I throw on my cruise control and I let it do its thing and I'm chilling, man. And it's safety. It's better for me. It's better for my family, cool. Do I ever want to see a world where robots truly replace the simplest joys, a simple joy for me, which is driving, right? I don't ever want a government to say there's no more driver's licenses. You have to drive that. One of my best parts of life are like driving through beautiful sceneries, right? So that's one of the reasons I don't like Tesla and I don't like his creation per se. But it's one of those things, man, where we had too many people drink that Kool-Aid and now they're reaping what they sow. So that's what it is.
It should be interesting. Well, we have a lot more to cover in the next episode. To everybody tuning in, thank you so much. We've seen the audience slowly grow week by week. If you like what you see, please subscribe. And if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments below. And that's another episode of the Only Lawsuits podcast.
Yeah, send us memes. We want good memes.
We want good memes. Yeah.
Put them in the comments. We're going to look at the memes. We're going to talk about the memes. And that's one thing I want to talk, like future episodes, let's start getting our favorite memes up.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.